Hey, Christ Church family. Glad to be here with you today. I want to be reading from Philippians chapter 1, verses 12 through 14. And just to give a little context to this passage, this is where Paul is in prison. And he's not in prison for any wrong that he has committed, but for simply being a Christian. And in the prison in this time, you're really not taken care of. You had to count on other people to come and bring you food, and it was a pretty rough situation that he was in. So this is what he writes. Now I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I'm in chains for Christ. Because of my chains, most of the brothers in the Lord have been encouraged to speak the word of God more courageously and fearlessly. And I think this is a pretty neat passage because in this moment, Paul has the opportunity to really be complaining. I'm in prison. I didn't do anything to deserve it. Woe is me. And if I was in his situation, I think that I would be praying to God that you would remove this circumstance from my life, and then I'll go and serve you, and I'll preach, and I'll do all those kinds of things. But Paul doesn't do that. Paul doesn't linger on his circumstances. Rather, he prays and kind of asks God to use him in his circumstances. And that's an important distinction from hoping the circumstances will leave rather than just saying, I want to be used in this moment, even if the circumstances aren't good. And he also, is used to preaching to larger crowds. And here he is. He has a prison guard or two and a couple other inmates that are there with him. And yet he doesn't complain about his platform or the amount of people that he's preaching to. Instead, he understands that God has a plan and a purpose for him in that moment and in that circumstance. And so my encouragement to all of you, as we look at this passage and as we continue in these different circumstances that we're in right now, while we're isolated, we're quarantined, there's a lot of unknown out there. My encouragement to you is that maybe you would begin to pray that God would use you in these circumstances in the here and the now, rather than saying, God, when this is all over, this is what I'll do for you. Or God, if you'll take these circumstances away, then I'll serve you. But pray that God would use you in these circumstances. And also, don't be so worried about the platform or the sphere of influence or the people that God may be using you to proclaim the good news to. Paul could have easily said, what's the purpose? There's only 6 or 7 people here with me. But instead, he shared the gospel and he proclaimed it boldly, and it said that it empowered others to do the same. And so I'm not sure who you're with right now or who you're isolated from or what your platform looks like, but I want to encourage you to really be willing to share the gospel. That may be to your spouse, that may be to your children, that may be to a couple close friends and family. But I want to encourage you to share the gospel boldly and know that Christ can use you in your circumstances in the here and the now. And that is good news, that God is sovereign over our circumstances and over our situations and over all the unknown things of this world.